If you've been shopping for a European-tuned compact hatchback, or if you've been shopping for a Toyota Corolla and thought, I want something that handles a little bit better, is a little bit more practical, and perhaps a little bit more stylish, then the 2017 Corolla IM is the vehicle for you. If the Corolla IM looks familiar to you, there are a few reasons why that would be. First off, this was known for 2016 as the Scion IM. Toyota decided to kill off the Scion brand in the United States and moved most of the models on into the Toyota brand. So the only real change between 2016 and 2017 is that this is no longer sold as a Scion, it's now sold as a Toyota. The other reason that this might look familiar to you is that it is sold as the Corolla hatchback in certain world markets and as the Toyota Auris in Europe. As a result, the Corolla IM may wear the Corolla badge, and it also has essentially the same 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine under the hood, but a great deal of the vehicle is unique. We have a double wishbone suspension in the rear, which is very different than the suspension we find in the Corolla sedan, and overall this vehicle is definitely tuned more towards the European market than your typical American compact vehicle. That means that although this is not any faster than the Corolla sedan out on the road, it is considerably more fun. I also think that the interior is just a notch nicer than the Corolla. Perhaps the biggest thing to know about the Corolla IM, however, is that Toyota decided to keep the pricing strategy from Scion intact, even though this is now labeled as a Toyota product. That means this comes only two ways. The model we're looking at right here, which has the automatic transmission, or a version that is essentially identical to this with a 6-speed manual. As we'll go into at the end of this video, that makes the Corolla IM the best hatchback value going on in America, in my opinion. It also means this is very well priced and very well equipped when compared to most of the compact hatchback competition. The front end design is instantly recognizable as a modern Toyota. I actually remarked upon this when I first drove this vehicle as a Scion because it didn't look like the other Scions in the lineup. It really does look more like the Toyota Camry or the Toyota RAV4, especially with this design right here by the Toyota logo and the way that this angles back. All models have projector headlamps with an LED accent strip running there inside. We don't find fog lamps down below. Instead, we get these sort of egg crate grills down lower. Because Toyota decided to keep their one-price-fits-all strategy, and because Toyota has dedicated themselves to active safety systems, all models of the Corolla IM get the Toyota Safety Sense C package. That includes collision warning, autonomous braking, lane departure warning, and automatic high beams. It's all offered by this little module right here behind the windscreen. This is one notch below the Toyota Safety Sense P package, which also includes radar adaptive cruise control. So we don't find the radar cruise control in this particular model, we just get the autonomous braking system. The European roots are also obvious when you take a look at the overall size of the Corolla IM. This is just over 170 inches long, meaning this is one of the more compact hatchbacks. This is about 1 inch shorter than the Elantra or the Ford Focus, about 5 inches shorter than a Mazda 3, and notably shorter than the all-new Civic hatchback. This also has a much more traditional, and I might also say practical form versus the Civic hatchback. That has a very raked profile, a much longer rear end, and this is a little bit more upright, a little bit more traditional. As we see with most sedan and hatchback pairings, the biggest difference is right back here behind the rear wheel because we have this hatch area which improves cargo space and cargo practicality, but it doesn't require the vehicle to be quite as long as a traditional trunk. Because Toyota has maintained a relatively traditional hatchback profile, rear headroom also tends to be a little bit better than some of those sexier shaped sedans. Out back, we have much more distinctive tail lamp modules than we find in the Corolla sedan. They extend from the hatch right over here to the side of the vehicle. We have a single exhaust tip down here on the passenger side, and the overall style of the back end reminds me an awful lot of the Toyota RAV4. There's also a standard integrated backup camera right there below the Toyota logo and a standard spoiler right here on top of the hatch. This engine produces 137 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque, which is on the lower end of this segment. That means that if you're after a high-performance compact hatchback, you will need to look at vehicles from some other manufacturers. Sending power to the front wheels is a standard 6-speed manual transmission, or you can get this vehicle with one option, the continuously variable transmission. If you choose the continuously variable transmission as this model is equipped, the EPA says you should average 31 miles per gallon, but as we'll go over later, we actually got better than EPA fuel economy out of this vehicle, putting this right at the top of the pack in terms of real-world efficiency. Front seat comfort comes in at 8 out of 10 points. These seats are very supportive, but you should know that we don't have adjustable lumbar support. However, I find the amount of lumbar support adequate in this seat design. We also have a tilt telescopic steering column with a moderate range of motion. Because all Corolla IM models are configured identically, there's no option to get a power driver's seat or an adjustable lumbar support. As you'd expect out of a vehicle that's on the smaller end of the segment, you will find more legroom in something like a Mazda 3 or the Honda Civic hatchback. However, I still have about 2 inches of legroom sitting right here behind myself. I also have a reasonable amount of headroom, more than the average sedan in the compact group. Sitting upright back here in the rear seat, I still have about ½ an inch of headroom left, and we don't have a sunroof available in the IM. Moving over to the middle seat is a little higher off the ground, but because of the shape of the roof, my hair is barely brushing the ceiling. I still have just a hair of headroom left. The difference in legroom is noticeable if I move over here to the right side passenger seat, because the front seat is all the way back in its tracks, and I have essentially no legroom left sitting right back there. My knees are brushing the seat, but they're not digging into it. Rear seat passengers get a softly padded center armrest with 2 cup holders, and importantly, a shoulder belt for the center seat position that comes out of the seat itself, not out of the ceiling. I do find that handier, especially for child seat installation. The rear seats fold in a 60-40 fashion, and they're just a little bit above the rear cargo area, but there's a slight ramp to help you pull cargo from the back right on up to the seat back. One of the big reasons to buy the IM over the Corolla sedan is cargo space, because behind this hatch, we find just under 21 cubic feet of storage area. That is more than 7 cubic feet more than you find in the Corolla sedan. Although the IM is on the smaller side of the compact hatchback segment, and therefore we find a slightly smaller cargo area back here, it is still quite practical because we were able to fit 3 of these 24-inch roller bags right back here in the cargo area. Now this is sized so that I could not get a 4th right back here in this position, although you could put some smaller luggage right down here. Under the cargo area load floor, we find a few practical touches. This vehicle does have a compact spare tire, as you can see right there, but you could put some smaller items in there. And we have these storage dividers right here under the cargo area load floor. Thanks to the overall size and shape of this cargo area and the fact that we get that compact spare tire when so many cars are getting rid of it, I'm going to give this cargo area 8 out of 10 points when it comes to our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index. You may get a little bit more room in the larger hatchbacks in this segment, but you'll really only be able to fit 1 more roller bag back there. As we take a spin around the interior, again, keep in mind that this only comes in this one configuration. We have height adjustable seat belts for the driver and the front passenger. We also have 2-way adjustable headrests and fabric seats. The overall interior design is very similar to the Toyota Corolla that we see in the US. We have this soft touch upper section of the door so you can rest your arm on there, and then we have a fabric insert and fabric armrest lower with a decent amount of hard plastic lower on the doors like we typically find in compact vehicles. Towards the front of the door by the speaker grille, we find some bottle holders. Whether or not you like the style of the Corolla's interior, parts quality is actually very high for this segment. We have a soft touch injection molded upper section of the dashboard, a soft touch center section right here, and then this white strip is actually a stitched pleather insert. And then we have a moderately sized bin-style glove compartment below that. I was easily able to fit a large tablet computer inside. Moving to the center of the dashboard, we find 2 air vents on either side of this digital clock. The logical reason that Toyota is still using a separate digital clock is because they do use a double DIN radio that's designed to be replaced easily aftermarket. That's something that, again, we see brought down from the Scion brand. The standard Toyota head unit supports Bluetooth integration as well as USB and iPhone integration. It also offers AM and FM satellite radio. Below the infotainment screen, we find a standard 2-zone climate control system. Then we have a 12-volt power outlet, USB input, and auxiliary input. If I move the shifter out of the way, you'll notice there's also a small storage cubby right there that's not quite large enough to put my iPhone 7 Plus in. If I pull the USB cable out, you'll notice that compartment does close. Continuing down from there, we have a gated style console shifter. Drive is all the way to the back. There's a manual mode for the CVT that's over to the left. You push away from the driver to change gear up, pull towards the driver for gear down. Behind the shifter, we find a sport mode enable disable button, traction control enable disable button, and a manual handbrake. Between the front seats, we have 2 large cup holders and then a softly padded fabric covered center armrest. This opens in 2 stages. The first one has a compartment just large enough to put wallets in. And then underneath that, we have an average size storage compartment for a compact sedan. The instrument cluster features a large tachometer and large speedometer, and in the center of that, a standard color multifunction display. This gives us the status of our safety systems on the vehicle warning messages, the ability to change certain vehicle settings, as well as our typical trip computer readouts. Zooming out from there, we find the standard leather-wrapped 3-spoke steering wheel. This is very similar to what we see in other Toyota models. On the left side, we find our infotainment controls, volume up, down, track forward, backward, with dedicated phone hang-up and pickup buttons, a mode button, and a voice command button. On the right side of the steering wheel, we find the buttons that control that multifunction display and the trip computer, and then we have our lane departure warning enable and disable button. As we see with other Toyota models, the cruise control is activated via this stalk that moves with the steering wheel. In our acceleration tests, we ran from 0 to 60 in 8.6 seconds. Ours is the CVT or continuously variable transmission equipped model. That is definitely slower than the Honda Civic hatchback, which comes standard with their new 1.5-liter turbocharged engine. But this is only about 1/2 a second off the Hyundai Elantra or certain versions of the Ford Focus. Although some people dislike CVTs, you should know this is going to be faster in most driving situations than the 6-speed manual transmission because this shifts faster than a human can with that manual transmission. You should also know that unlike some entries in this segment, this feels a little bit peppier than those numbers would indicate, likely because of the low curb weight that we see in the IM. Thanks to that low curb weight, we stopped from 60 miles an hour to 0 in 126 feet, which is fairly short for the compact segment. The IM does not come with performance tires, and they're not as wide as the performance tires that we find in certain trims of the competition. However, this still stops relatively short, again because of that light curb weight. When it comes to handling, this does not handle like an American market Corolla, even though they share the name Corolla. The suspension in this vehicle is much better composed. It feels much tighter, much firmer. We get less body roll when we start throwing this into the corners, and overall this is just an awful lot more fun and an awful lot more chuckable out on your favorite winding mountain road. That's all down to the suspension tuning and the suspension design that we find in the Corolla IM. However, the standard tires that we find in this vehicle do let the handling down just a little bit, because you'll actually find better grip numbers in certain versions of the Focus, or of course the Mazda 3. The Mazda 3 has excellent road feel. We actually get a little bit of communication from the front tires. It's a lot easier to tell what that vehicle is doing, but I suspect if you put comparable tires on this and on the Mazda 3, the overall grip numbers would be very, very similar. Although the steering is numb in the Corolla IM, it is very, very accurate. The body remains very level in the corners, and the vehicle just feels more engaging than any version of the Corolla I've ever driven. This is the kind of vehicle that could very easily handle a factory sport package. I really wish Toyota would consider putting perhaps 70 extra horsepower under the hood and beefier tires. I really don't think the Corolla IM would need much more than that to compete very directly with something like a Sentra SR or most versions of the Civic hatchback. The Civic Sport hatchback is in a different category than this. It definitely feels much tighter and much sportier, but it's also going after a slightly different kind of shopper. Out here on gravel roads, the firmer suspension in the IM is definitely noticeable versus the Corolla sedan. However, this is not overly firm for the entire compact segment. Something like a Volkswagen Golf in 4-door form or a Volkswagen Golf wagon would definitely be competition with this vehicle, and they will be just a little bit firmer. However, the Corolla IM is notably more firm than the regular Corolla or something like the base versions of the Elantra GT. Perhaps the biggest difference, however, between this and the regular version of the Corolla is how the overall chassis behaves when it encounters rough pavement or broken pavement in corners or gravel roads like we're on right here. Because the regular version of the Corolla can feel just a little bit upset in the rear, but this vehicle uses a very different and actually much more elegant and more expensive design for its rear suspension system. The rear suspension design in this vehicle is a double wishbone design, and that does make a pretty big difference. In our cabin noise test, we scored 73 decibels, which puts this right in the thick of things for the compact sedan or hatchback segment. In terms of fuel economy, the EPA rates this model at 31 miles per gallon combined, but we have been averaging over a week of very mixed driving 33 miles per gallon combined, which is absolutely excellent, so I'm going to give this an A when it comes to fuel economy. You will find slightly better fuel economy in the turbocharged versions of the Honda Civic, however they're going to cost you significantly more than this model. Outside the Honda Civic or this Corolla IM, if you want better fuel economy than this, you will need to look at some of the hybrid alternatives. My bottom line out on the road for the Corolla IM is that this is exactly what I wish the regular Corolla sedan would be. The suspension design in this vehicle, the overall tuning of this vehicle is just an awful lot more fun out on the road, and this of course combines that level of fun with the legendary Toyota reliability that we've come to expect. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more exciting than an Elantra or a Corolla or a Chevy Cruze, but you want that legendary Toyota reliability, this is exactly the vehicle for you. It's also worth noting that Toyota's performance division, TRD, offers a decent number of aftermarket modifications for the Corolla IM because we do see this vehicle in other world markets, as I said earlier, so there's a decent pool of parts to pull from. There are a lot of suspension modifications, wheel upgrades, brake upgrades, etc. that you can do to make this vehicle handle definitely as well as a Honda Civic Sport. On the downside, there really aren't very many performance modifications to give this vehicle more power, so this is always going to be one of the slower entries in the segment. For 2017, Toyota decided to keep the streamlined pricing from the Scion brand in place even though the IM is now being sold as a Toyota Corolla. That means the model starts at $18,750 for the base model with the manual transmission and all the options you see on your screen. There are really only two things you can select, whether you want the automatic transmission or the manual transmission, and that bump to the automatic is a very reasonable $740, and whether or not you want the factory navigation system, and that's $900. Personally, I'd skip the factory navigation system, but I would definitely take the automatic. Toyota recently decided to put the majority of their advanced safety technologies standard in a wide variety of their vehicles in North America, and that includes the Corolla IM as well. Although the Corolla IM does not get the radar adaptive cruise control system that we do find in the sedan Corolla. However, you'll still find their pre-collision warning system and their autonomous braking system in all models of the Corolla IM. Again, even the models with the manual transmission. You'll also find niceties in the base model like the leather-wrapped steering wheel and the 2-zone climate control that we don't typically find in base models in the compact sedan or compact hatchback segments. Now let's talk about pros and cons. Pros for the Corolla IM are definitely the very low pricing. The Corolla IM is so low priced that it actually is not that much more expensive than a subcompact hatchback, something like a Honda Fit or a Nissan Versa Note. We also have those advanced safety systems standard in every model, and every model of the IM will handle very well. That's thanks to the wide tires as well as the different suspension that we find in the IM versus the Corolla sedan. Again, the Corolla IM is also known as the Toyota Auris in other world markets, and the Auris was definitely designed with Europe in mind. The two biggest cons for the Corolla IM have to do with the acceleration and the fact that we do have the one-size-fits-all pricing. You'll notice that we don't have any options to select, so you cannot get leather upholstery, you can't get HID headlamps or LED headlamps, or any of those additional luxury features that you may find optional in the competition. Speaking of the competition, let's start out the competitive set with the Ford Focus. For 2017, the Focus starts at $19,765. The Focus hatchback is one of the lower priced hatches in this segment. However, when you start taking a look at standard equipment, the Corolla IM's best corollary in the Ford lineup is the SEL hatch for $21,920. That is notably more expensive than the Corolla IM, and you still won't find the autonomous braking system or the pre-collision warning system. The Focus has an excellent driving feel out on the road and handling is very good, but absolute grip is actually going to be better in the Corolla. That applies to the Focus SE, the Focus SEL, and the Focus Titanium. Obviously, the Focus ST and the Focus RS will handle better and outperform the Corolla IM, but most of the versions of the Ford Focus you'll find on the road are not going to be any faster or handle better than the Corolla. If that surprises you, keep in mind that the Corolla IM handles very differently than the Corolla sedan. The Focus sedan certainly outhandles the Corolla sedan, but when we're talking about hatchbacks, it's a different matter, because the Corolla IM is quite a different vehicle. Ford's Focus is starting to get a little old, and it is showing inside the cabin. Although I will say the Corolla IM has actually been out for a while, so its interior and its exterior are not exactly fresh. However, it is a relatively newer model for America, so it seems a little bit newer on the inside. One of the big omissions that we do find in the Corolla IM is the lack of Android Auto or Apple CarPlay support, although you could very easily remedy that aftermarket and still pay less for your Corolla IM than a Ford Focus with their Sync 3 system. Next up, we have the Elantra GT, which is $18,800 for the 2017 model year. Now, we do have a brand new Elantra GT coming up very soon. We don't know what that will be priced like, but expect it to be a little bit more expensive. Hyundai has a well-deserved reputation for delivering excellent value in all of their models. But interestingly enough, this is an area where the Corolla IM actually manages to beat Hyundai. Because an Elantra GT comparably equipped to the IM that we've been testing this week would set you back $21,450. Although you may find a better deal on the lot for the 2017 Elantra GT because it is an outgoing model, it's still going to be a little bit more expensive than the Corolla. When it comes to handling, this is another win for the Corolla IM. Because of the design of the Elantra's rear suspension, it does become upset over broken pavement when you start really pushing it in the corners, and that's not something you find in the Corolla. When it comes to acceleration, the two models are very close together, although the Elantra GT is a little bit faster than the Corolla IM. Now that will change for 2018 because Hyundai has announced that they will put the same 1.6-liter turbocharged engine that we find in the Elantra Sport sedan into the Elantra GT, and that will be notably faster than the Corolla IM. Before I move on, I should also mention that the 2017 Elantra GT won't have the advanced safety technology that we find in the Corolla. That brings us along to the all-new Honda Civic hatchback, which starts at $19,700. Some people may say that the Honda Civic hatchback isn't really a hatchback, it is more of a liftback because of the overall design of the rear end. However, Honda still calls it a hatchback, so we'll put it in this comparison. Honda has also been quite aggressive at putting their latest safety technology even into their low-end trims, but they're not making that safety technology standard, so you do have to pay $1,000 extra for the Honda Sensing package. When you comparably equip a Civic hatchback as close as you can to the Corolla IM, you'll end up at $23,800. That makes the Honda Civic more than 20% more expensive than the Corolla IM. Of course, you are getting a standard turbocharged engine, a more refined cabin, and a more refined vehicle overall. The standard turbo engine in the Civic hatchback will also make the Civic considerably faster than the Corolla IM. And by adding the Honda Sensing system, you will get the autonomous braking system like we find in the Corolla IM, but you also get radar adaptive cruise control. However, even when you factor in the extra goodies that you get in the Honda Civic hatchback, it is still going to be thousands of dollars more expensive than a comparably equipped Corolla IM, thanks to the extra power, the extra handling ability, the extra handling feel, and of course the extra refinement that we get inside the Honda Civic. The Honda Civic's cabin is unquestionably a better place to be. The seats are more comfortable than we find in the IM. You can find more luxury features inside the cabin of the Civic, but you will definitely pay for that extra refinement. Next up, we have the Subaru Impreza hatchback. At $18,995, it is also one of the best values in this segment. Not because of the standard equipment that we find inside the cabin, but the standard equipment that we find under the hood, because the Impreza, like all Subaru models except for the BRZ, comes standard with all-wheel drive. And all-wheel drive is about a $1,500 value. The all-wheel drive system really puts the Subaru in a category of its own, because with the exception of the Impreza, all-wheel drive in the compact sedan or compact hatchback category really is limited to performance vehicles. If you're simply looking for a compact vehicle that has excellent traction, the Impreza really is going to be your only option, because you won't find all-wheel drive in the versions of the competition with which the Impreza competes. You will find all-wheel drive performance hatchbacks or all-wheel drive performance sedans, but you won't find your run-of-the-mill compact hatchback or compact sedan with available all-wheel drive in the United States. As I usually say, however, there is no free lunch, so in order to give you that standard all-wheel drive system, we do find fewer features in the base model of Impreza than we find in the Corolla IM. That means that to comparably equip the Impreza to the Corolla IM, again with the exception of the all-wheel drive system, you'd end up at $23,910. Even after we adjust the prices to factor out the all-wheel drive system that's standard in the Impreza, and the fact that in order to get the autonomous braking system it also includes adaptive cruise control, we're still talking about a vehicle that's 10 to 15% more expensive than the Corolla. Even though the Impreza has a standard all-wheel drive system, because of the overall design of the vehicle, the way the suspension is set up, etc., handling is still going to be a win for the Corolla IM. When it comes to 0 to 60 acceleration, interestingly enough, that's also a win for the Corolla, because the Impreza is not exactly speedy in this category. Last up, we have the Nissan Versa Note, which may sound like an odd comparison because we are talking about compact hatchbacks, not subcompact hatchbacks, and the Nissan Versa Note is actually one category lower. However, the Nissan Versa Note ends up at $18,710 in its SL trim versus $19,490 for the Corolla. That means that the Corolla is only about 4 to 5% more expensive than a comparably equipped Nissan Versa Note, and that delta is actually much smaller than the delta between the Elantra GT and the Corolla IM or the Honda Civic and the Corolla IM. The extra cash buys you a considerably more refined vehicle. Although it is interesting to note that the Nissan Versa is very well packaged, so you don't actually find that much more legroom or headroom in the Corolla IM, although the overall vehicle does get wider inside the cabin. So if you plan on putting adults across the rear bench seat, or you just want a little bit more elbow room up front, you'll find that in the Corolla. You don't find that in the Versa. You also find niceties like dual zone climate control, which are not available in the Note. My bottom line in the compact sedan hatchback is that the Honda Civic is still my top pick. However, it is important to keep in mind that it is 20% more expensive than a comparably equipped Corolla IM. So the Corolla IM is without a doubt the best value in the compact hatchback segment. But the Corolla IM is more than just a good value in this segment, because it also is one of the best handling compact hatchbacks, which again is not something we can say for the Corolla sedan. So if you're looking at the Corolla sedan, but you think you want something that's a little bit sportier, take a look at the Corolla IM instead. Aside from acceleration and the fact that we can't get leather upholstery in the cabin, you really aren't giving up much stepping from any of the competitive vehicles into the Corolla IM, but you will save several $1,000s. That means that although the Honda Civic is my top pick in this segment, the Corolla IM is definitely a vehicle that's worth putting on your shopping list. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes. Be sure and find us over at facebook.com/AlexandAutos. If you want to support this channel, you can also head over to patreon.com and look us up there. I'll see you next week.